Hello, 420 MSP community. Harry Brailsford here. And as you know, we're trying to add value every day in every way and all day by talking to people in the cannabis industry. Typically, we focus on cannabis technology, but I feel very strongly that you need to have the context of what this industry represents. And we have a friend from the tech sector, Dennis James, who is now an expert in medical cannabis. So, by way of introduction, Dennis, if you could talk to us about your time in the tech industry. I believe you're with an ISV and you were also with a training company. Let's do a hello world this month and then talk about your new site, sir.
Okay. Well, basically, I've been in the tech industry and things like that since there were Altair computers, and I don't think probably anybody even remembers those yet or these days.
Oh, no, I do.
Yeah, you do. And so I basically grew up in the IT industry. I worked for Egghead Software for a long time. Um, and basically, throughout that time period, I went through a lot of different iterations, but primarily working with companies that had some connection to the tech industry.
Yeah,
For example, I was at SQLsoft for a long time,
yeah,
and if you've done any training at all in the Pacific Northwest, you know who they are. I've also worked with ISVs, iLink systems. I was helping them do some stuff. I was director of marketing and Microsoft Alliance there. You know, the typical, um, IT industry roundabout that you do where you continue to find companies that have some interest
yeah.
for you and you get involved.
Well, so you have reinvented yourself. That's what I like about you, by the way. You and I have worked together for a number of years, and we've all tried to reinvent ourselves post server and pro cloud, and it just changed. And so turns out you're an expert in medical cannabis, and I want to frame it up before you kind of tell us about your expertise and your site. That folks, a lot of you who bought my book are really trying to approach the cannabis technology opportunity from the medicinal point of view, palliative care, and so on, because that's where your comfort zone is. Dennis, you can appreciate that. A lot of my readers, they don't want the intoxication effect of cannabis in their life. That's not what they're promoting. But everybody understands the medicinal qualities because everybody has had a family member or relative who is in hospice or palliative care or whatever, right? I mean, it's not a hard conversation. So, with that said, you provided some wisdom to me already that medical cannabis can be used to assist people with arthritis, chronic pain, epilepsy, glaucoma, MS, cancer, Crohn's disease. Wow, the list goes on. Dennis, I'm going to give you the talking stick. Talk to me
Okay.
about medical cannabis and then tell me about your site.
Well, let me walk you back about, I guess, 6 years now. I just come out of a working with a company, and it was an incredibly stressful time. You know, it's
Mhm.
not like all of us don't have, that high stress. I was talking to one CEO of one company, and he noted, "Man, this just keeps going on." I said, "You think you don't have PTSD at this point?" You know, and you know, I basically started to get sick. I'm not going to go into the gross details, but basically my autoimmune system decided that it wasn't going to keep up with things, and I was running into, being super tired. A
Yeah,
lot of, you can feel that thing in the morning where you wake up and you're just not right, and it continued to get worse and worse and worse.
yeah,
Went to a lot of doctors, and I probably have a tub full of tubes with white steroid cream in them that said, "Oh, that's going to fix you up," and none of it continued to work. And so I just kind of continued going on and on. And I thought, wow, what am I going to do about this? And I'm just probably like everybody else about that time. I was going, well, I could try that cannabis stuff. We all took a little bit of cannabis when we were kids, if we were old enough. Um, and so I thought, well, I didn't quite want to do it because, I thought, wow, cannabis, there's people in jail for cannabis. But then they decided to make it medical cannabis available, and I started to use it. And to make a long story short, it took me a couple of years to do it, but I actually got a lot better. The autoimmune aspect of it went away. I even got a thing called Bell's palsy, that
Mhm.
came up later on where it can cause almost a stroke-like condition. And I do have that picture on my website, by the way. And
Mhm.
finally, now I'm feeling pretty good. I do medical cannabis every day. I use it primarily to sleep because, basically that was my number one reason for probably getting sick in the first place.
Yep.
And then plus there's just a lot of other, if you're very careful about, what you choose, there's a lot of other things that can help you. And so to make a long story short, um, I had a lot of problems, and I saw that in trying to do medical cannabis, there were lots of problems that people have to face, like how much of it do I take, what do I take, and so I created Medicana Care.
Yeah.
Uh, so people can go up there now and they can see a couple of things that are pretty important, and we can get into that later. But that's basically my story. And what I've done is I've rounded up a lot of different great medical cannabis oriented retailers. I've got medical cannabis oriented doctors, and I've got a couple of brands that I really like that I consider to be extremely safe. Um, I've seen there's a thing called a COA that is a test that basically says that there's no heavy metals, there's no pesticides, there's, a bunch of other stuff. And I worked out a relationship with them so that I can present these products and these people to people when they're trying to step up and get it going. So that's generally the whole thing right there. It's
Yeah.
not a heavy duty thing, right?
Well, no, but you're early, and I would say your site. I'm going to call it often in the sense that you have a lot of current content, and that's why it's interesting. And again, to kind of go back to my earlier point,
Uh-huh.
the, the nature of our audience ranges from conservative to liberal. Of course, we have a large community of MSPs, and uh, again, what we're seeing is darn near everybody's comfortable with the medical cannabis conversation. And then a point you hit on about safety is another comfort zone. And by that I mean I've talked to moms, I've talked to others who are opposed to cannabis legalization. And Dennis, by the time if I can just get 20 minutes with them and kind of walk through my research that I did, and now I'm gonna liberally borrow from your research, but I'll give you accreditation. Um,
No problem.
but the point is that safety factor about leads and contamination of molds and mildews. Nobody should want to go back to the black market. I understand you may have political opposition to legalization, but do you really want to go back to the black market where we don't have safety? Does that make sense?
It does totally. In the first couple of years that I was using medical cannabis, and I didn't quite see it that way as medical cannabis at first. I just saw it as, well, I can take this and I can feel better.
Right.
But I also was involved with taking some cannabis products from certain manufacturers and things like that, or brands, as you might say them, and only to see them get busted later on for, having pesticides and things like that. That really is the key issue. We know that this is occurring, and we know that basically you can take this and do it, but now how do you do it safely, or how do you take the right amount? That is another
Yeah.
important part of it, right? So you could take, five little chocolates, and then you could get overly stimulated, would be a
Yeah.
nice way to put it. So we all have to learn how to do that, and that's probably one of the main things that's key. And I put it on the website is how to actually set it up. What steps do you need to take to do it, and how do you use it? What is a vape? This is all very super basic stuff for anybody. But I want to point out one thing that you're
Yeah.
while I've been down here in the trenches, hey, old people are way ahead of us on this. I mean, like, seniors and things like that. These folks are hip. I mean, I've been focusing very strongly in that market, with the senior homes and things like that. And you go in and you think, oh man, I'm going to have to start at zero. And no, they're already taking CBD products.
Right.
They're already, using it for pains and aches and things like that. So, and in fact, one interesting thing is Nielsen. And, when you can get to the Nielsen's and the other folks like that can really do surveys. They did a survey that came out, the results came out in June 11, 2019, and it says the #1 reason adults are interested in legalized cannabis is for medical.
Yeah.
And while it's maybe not a focus here in the state as much as it should be, I mean, the people are focused on it because they have pain, they want to sleep, they are anxious, even those base easy things like that. I mean, Tiger Woods is chewing CBD gum while he's doing the Masters, and he admitted it. So,
Good Lord. Well,
yeah.
we can't top that one. Well, hey, Dennis, we're at time for this month's contribution.
Sure.
So again, folks, this was a Hello World on Medicanacare and the medical cannabis conversation. Next month with Dennis, we're going to double click down into his content. I see we have a 5-step program. We have stories. We have a start here. I love start here's. Every time I open a package, there's a little brochure that says start here.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dennis, will you be at any, to your knowledge, will you be at any industry events or meetups in the near future that people might be able to meet you?
Well, I think probably everybody's going to be going to HempFest, and that's coming up.
Yeah.
And then plus I will be at a couple of different shows here that will be happening later in the year.
Okay.
There's also Cannabis and Budfest and a few other things like that. So if I'm around, I'm happy to talk about it. What I'd like to talk about next time also is something that would probably be more interesting to them, which is how do I make money on this? What do I need to do to figure out where I want to fit into this medical cannabis industry? And I have lots of information for people in terms of what they can do, how they should be doing it. Should they be doing recreational cannabis? Should they be doing medical cannabis? And how do you get to them? So anyway, that would be of some assistance maybe.
And I'm just typing. You can hear me typing how to make money. Imagine that. That's always a crowd pleaser. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Jenny, in the radio control room. Dennis, have a great month, and we'll circle the wagons in July. Thank you very much.
Not a problem.